What up, Space Fam? Goes in here from Anime Uproar, back at it again to discuss the latest and craziest developments in the One Piece story. This was an amazing chapter that we've been waiting for a long time. It includes more of Zoro's backstory, King's identity, Enma's secret, and much more, so make sure to stay tuned for this goosebumps-inducing chapter. If you do enjoy seeing these One Piece reviews and want to keep them coming, you know what to do. Channel the Pirate King within and smash that like button with no mercy. As we all know, smashing that like button is Pirate King energy and passing is Orochi energy, so choose wisely. If you haven't, make this the video you subscribe, and this is crucial. Hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications or you will miss future One Piece videos and updates. That's just the way it works. And while you wait for the next chapter to drop, feel free to check out my huge and growing One Piece playlist that includes videos on all the Yonko, Admiral, Supernova, and much more. Link to that is in the description. Now without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. This chapter is called Shimotsuki Kozaburo, who was the master swordsman who crafted Enma and Wado Ichimonji, aka the blade Zoro got from Kuina. Kozaburo was also Sensei Koshiro's father and Kuina's grandfather. Since most of us have good reason to believe that Zoro is related to Shimotsuki Ryuma and is even the son of Shimotsuki Ushimaru, it suggests that all these Shimotsuki are related. Thus, it seems even more fitting for Koshiro to entrust Kuina's rare blade to Zoro as he did. Anyways, all this stuff is fascinating. It's so awesome to be getting this info about Kuina, Koshiro, and Wado Ichimonji after more than 1,000 chapters. Sometimes you forget to focus on the character's origins, so I love it when the story brings it back into focus like this after so much time. But back to the King versus Zoro fight. Enma is draining energy from Zoro without his permission. It's pretty clear already that Enma will be the key to the victory in this fight. But before that, Zoro has to figure out how to actually use it to its full potential. King's comments are hilarious too, as he asks Zoro, "Trouble in paradise?" It is strange to see a swordsman quarreling with his sword, and King will definitely bring that up more in this chapter, but a common theme we're seeing in One Piece recently is that the best swords are more like partners to the swordsman rather than just dead tools. And although in the short term King's blade seems much simpler to use and more effective, Enma's difficulty of use will no doubt correlate with greater potential down the line. For now though, Zoro stabs King. King has the best reaction ever, saying, "Ah, a direct hit." Not worried at all, then he appears to explode and we jump to Sanji. Really, it's not so much about Sanji's fight here as it's about giving us more information about Zoro and King. Queen confirms that King is in fact the surviving Lunarian. He tells us they were all supposed to be eradicated. He comments that those monsters, as he calls them, could thrive in any inhospitable environment the world threw at them. People like that may even be able to survive on the moon, as their name suggests. Queen even says they were considered gods in the past, and I'm glad Sanji actually asked the question we're probably all wondering, how come they're so OP and yet they got eradicated? But Queen says, as if Oda himself is teasing us through Queen, that's something you'll have to find out for yourself. That's yet another thing I'm super curious about, but for now within that story there is a suggestion that King can obviously be defeated by Zoro if almost all of the godlike people were wiped out. If I had to guess, I'd assume that it was the world government in a coordinated effort and perhaps with a surprise attack that wiped them out. But we shall see. Whoever did it must have found the weakness that Lunarians have and that Zoro is looking for. Back to the main event with the Zoro and King battle. Not only is King fine after the stab and subsequent explosion, Zoro is the one on the ropes for a moment, thinking he'd be a goner if he used armament even a second later. Zoro is surprised that King is unscathed after blowing himself up, but still attacks using Lethal Lion's Song, according to him one of his strongest techniques. It literally looks like it had no effect at all on King, and King then moves in to attack. Zoro actually gets hurt because Enma started acting out and distracting him. The cliff below him straight up falls apart thanks to King's attack, and Zoro proceeds to fall. Once again, King insults and teases him, saying a swordsman beaten by his own sword. That's a first. So for now, the battle hasn't begun for real in a sense because Zoro hasn't synced up with Enma. Instead of working together, it's more like Enma's getting in the way. However, what Zoro was saying before in the previous chapter about needing to know the race of King before he can beat him actually makes more sense after what we've seen in in this chapter. For some reason, King seems completely unaffected by normal attacks, and it stands to reason that Lunarians have a special weakness to counterbalance their overpoweredness. Finally, we got a fight where Zoro will need to push beyond his current limits to win. It feels like it's been a while since he had to do that, so I'm super excited to see what that looks like. For now though, as Zoro is grabbing his swords in midair, he experiences some flashbacks. He grabs Sandai Kitetsu, which was said to be a cursed blade originally. In the meantime, King kicks him, insulting him for risking himself to save a sword. However, as I mentioned, swords have wills of their own in this series, at least the OP ones, and chances are they'll pay Zoro back for this loyalty that looks completely illogical to King. Next, he reaches out for Wado Ichimonji, the sword he got from Kuina. Thinking it's a relief it didn't fall off the island. We get a flashback to way back near the beginning of the series when Zoro begged Kuina's father for her sword and promises that he'll get strong enough that his name reaches up to the heavens and that he'll become the greatest swordsman for himself and for her. I've been saying this is and is going to continue to be a heavily Zoro focused arc, and having this flashback back to his origin only solidifies that. I also like the mention of reaching up to the heavens since it's a nice contrast with Enma, named after the god of the underworld. Pretty much. At the end of the series, you know Zoro's going to be saying, "We started from the bottom, now we here." We then get back to Zoro speaking to swordsmith Tenguyama Hitetsu in the past, and the latter telling him it must be fate that Zoro gets Enma because Enma and Wado Ichimonji were forged by the same man, the master swordsmith Shimotsuki Kozaburo, and yes, he just said the title of the chapter. Zoro finally starts connecting the dots and thinking about how a sword from Wano ended up in the East Blue. King continues the attack onslaught, and Zoro is clearly on the defensive as the flashbacks continue. The Tsunachi convo with Momo is brought up when Zoro said he heard it from an old geezer even though he never used it himself. He never learned the geezer's name, which is pretty hilarious, but he sat by the shore a lot. He only found out this geezer was Kuina's grandpa after he died. He puts that fact together with Hitetsu telling him that Kozaburo left the country illegally over 50 years ago. Then we get a flashback all the way back to when Zoro was a kid. Brand new stuff, and I gotta say, I've been waiting forever for this. 13 years ago in Shimotsuki village, the geezer tells Zoro that Tsunachi is a battle cry that gives one courage. But hilariously, Zoro says he won't use it since it sounds weird. He's such a classic annoying kid here, and it's hilarious to see. He asks the geezer if he was a samurai, and the geezer responds that Zoro should be quiet or the marines will come for him. They exchange insults, but the geezer, whose look is just amazing I must say, takes note of Zoro's energy and how hard he trains. Zoro at one point tells the geezer he lost to Kuina, so he needs to train non-stop, not just in the dojo. The geezer gives him 2 real swords even though Zoro has no money. So there we have yet another epic and rude old dude with a heart of gold in One Piece. The geezer goes on to imply that these swords aren't as special as his old ones and proceeds to educate us about swords. Like we've been saying, each blade is like a person with a unique disposition, not just dead tools. A swordsman is one who tames the sword's wild nature and bends it to their will. And here we get a cool moment where Zoro's told it's a joke when people say swords are cursed. It's just how named blades are. It's praise rather than anything else. They fulfill their purpose of taking life, and this explains why Zoro was so undaunted by the fact that his sword was said to be cursed. It's a really nice touch, and I'm glad we got it in this chapter. Kozaburo tells Zoro he crafted his magnum opus, aka his masterpiece, when he was still young. The temperament of the sword was something else. It would give chills to those holding it. He named it after the Lord of the Underworld, and Zoro finally realizes that that sword is the sword in front of him, aka Enma. This backstory mid-fight was masterfully done. I love the backstory itself, but it was also perfect for adding significance to this fight and to Enma specifically. The implication is, the more problematic the sword, like Enma, the better it is when one can finally sync up with it. And that is the task set before Zoro. Gotta also say, I absolutely love this old dude. Kozaburo is a boss. Finally, Zoro realizes that his village being called Shimotsuki doesn't seem like a coincidence anymore. He finally says that that old geezer was a samurai of Wano, specifically the swordsmith Shimotsuki Kozaburo. And as he says this, all I can think is imagine how hilarious it would be if Zoro had Sherlock Holmes's job. But lastly, he remembers being told that named blades stay vigilant, patiently waiting to find a swordsman worthy of them, and that a sword chooses its wielder, and Zoro realizes that Enma is just testing him. It's not resisting him or acting out of malice. Zoro just hasn't been measuring up to its standards, and he is awed that Oden was easily able to wield Enma with this much haki pouring out of him. Love the look of the blackened Enma too in this panel. The implication is that Zoro, once mastering Enma, will be near Oden level, or at least a lot closer to it, which is hype since we know what Oden did to Kaido, albeit to a younger Kaido. At the very least, I think it's safe to say it'll be enough to beat King. Then, as underlings try to rush Zoro, his Conqueror's haki causes them to faint. Always cool seeing Zoro use Conqueror's haki. Zoro remarks that he can only appease Enma with all of his haki, and that could kill him. But as we know, Zoro's never been one to shy away from situations that could kill him. In fact, he goes through them and says nothing happened. I really like this aspect. It wasn't about him needing to tame Enma per se, but about Enma forcing him to step up and go beyond what he thought would be possible. As we see Zoro, all his blades are burning, overflowing with haki, and King sees that he has kingly ambitions as well, which is pretty much a way of saying he's got Conqueror's haki. And just to top off this beautiful chapter, my favorite in a while, Zoro thinks of his meeting with Luffy. Way back then, Luffy said the future king of the pirates would settle for nothing less than the world's greatest swordsman. Zoro tells King, I guess you're right. After all, I made promises to my captain and my oldest friend. Thus, we're reminded of what makes Zoro tick, the promise he made to Kuina, to Luffy, and his own desire to be the best swordsman in the world. We're told Zoro is surpassing limits, which is hype since it is pretty much confirming that Zoro just became and is becoming the strongest he's ever been. This might be my favorite Zoro-focused chapter yet, but let me know if there's one you prefer more. Obviously, Zoro has had many great moments, but the way they tied up his backstory here and had him reaffirm his goal with the new power-up, it's just too good. I won't even ask you who was MVP here because it's obviously Zoro, although I would also accept Enma as an answer since swords are practically living characters at this point. And that is it for, as I said, one of my favorite chapters in a while. I loved it. Let me know what you thought about it and what you're expecting to see happening next. Will Zoro crush King suddenly, or will we get more back and forth moments as Zoro's power continues to increase? If you did enjoy this review and want to keep them coming, you know what to do. Channel the Pirate King within and smash that like button with no mercy. As we all know, smashing that like button is Pirate King energy and passing is Orochi energy, so choose wisely. If you haven't, make this the video you subscribe, and this is crucial. Hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications, or you will miss future One Piece videos and updates. That's just the way it works, and while you wait for the next chapter to drop, feel free to check out my huge and growing One Piece playlist that includes videos on all Yonko, Admirals, Supernova, and much more. Link to that is in the description, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys.